This is the Building Walls podcast, episode number 54, recorded September 28th, 2021. Psaki, Itty, Bittycoins.
That's why I made it a priority my entire career to work closely with you. From the time I got to the Senate 180 years ago.
No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman in anger other than in self-defense.
I'm prepared to say that I have a record of over 40 years and that I'm going to beat Joe Biden. Look at my record.
Calling this the Chinese virus. There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Building Walls podcast with our special guest, Mr. Brandon Gentile. How are you, Brandon?
It's great to be here. I'm here too, guys. I'm here too. You just
don't worry.
Stiff
We're
right
saving the
me.
best for last. We're saving the best for last.
It's such a ridiculous intro.
Got Chris Dayton over there.
Yeah.
You got a little triggered.
Like
it's all right,
co-host. You're introducing the guests before you even get to me.
Dude, I told you we're saving the best for last.
Come on.
Mr. Producer, I think we have to throw a trigger warning at the start here.
Well, we were saving the best for last. That's why we always introduce you last, Mr. Attack Helicopter in the house. Another week, another victory for you and DraftKings to update our audience. So
I've lost 3 weeks straight. Same with you, Chris. So
I'm 3 weeks. I
would like to win any place at this point.
It is what it is, but we are fired up. It's going to be a good show today. We got a big lineup today, and bringing on board one of our guests, and Chad did do the honors, Mr. Brandon Gentile.
Yeah, give us a hot intro here.
Well, here's the thing. I actually work with Brandon. Him and I partnered up a little earlier this year. We do some real estate investment stuff with the local real estate market here in Southeast Detroit. Very exciting times doing the things that we do. And honest to God, guys, everybody who's listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you're in for a treat. This guy knows his stuff. And a little bit of background on Brandon. Him and I both went to Michigan State, albeit I went a little earlier. I paved the way. But Mr. Gentile is notable for his ice skating skills, most likely playing hockey, and represented the national championship Michigan State Spartans.
Sure did.
What's up, dude? How you doing? And so we're fired up to have you a part of the show, Brandon. Excited to have you in, and can't wait to pick your brain on a few things.
I don't think Chris could be.
I appreciate you.
Oh, sorry, Brandon. I was going to say, I don't think Chris could be any happier to share that you played hockey for the national championship Michigan State squad.
I mean, not just playing collegiate hockey or ended up in the pros, but played for the national champion Michigan State Spartans. Woo-hoo!
With authority. Yes. Right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, it's gonna be a good time. We got, like I said, we've got a pretty big lineup here. So Chad, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about first?
I mean, I just want to say I don't think anyone does an intro better than you. That's why you're such a diamond, Chris.
It's all those late night owls.
That's right. At Aubrey's Pizza.
This guy's ready.
Chasing your upline somewhere. Finding him just eating an egg at Denny's.
All inside jokes from our days in Amway, which, you get used to doing the promotion, but you got to learn how to do that. And you know what? Honestly, it's easier when it's authentic. And in this case, we are fortunate to actually have somebody like Brandon on the show who's going to be able to share with us some insight, especially on all these topics. The world is literally crazy right now. Wouldn't you agree, Chad? I mean, seriously, it's nuts.
Having a guy like Brandon on, I'm so excited because there's nothing unauthentic about what you said. Knowing Brandon and having someone on the show who, is not only building a great family, a great business, but a great life for himself and everything he does, always studying something, whether it's crypto or real estate or, just any way to make himself better. And it's so exciting because, the premise for why we started it, even though we've probably veered off a little bit, we do our best to always bring it back to the building walls concept, but it's about building the family unit, right? And empowering the young kids of the present, because that's who is going to lead us in the future, right? And as the world continues to get more and more perverted, it seems like there's a new perversion every day, right? And half of the population just lets it happen. And they make excuses for it, right? Because we all make excuses for why we do the things we do, because there's that ego inside of us that doesn't want to be embarrassed and wants to make your life feel like you're doing something important. Well, stop making yourself feel like you're doing something important and just do something important, right? Actually have a purpose, right? Learn, accept responsibility, and move forward. And that's why I'm so excited to have Brandon on, because he is the epitome of that. And I think this is going to be an awesome show.
It should be a good one, that's for sure.
I just hate tyranny, so that's all.
Well, let's get rolling then. Let's talk about this Joe Rogan video.
Yeah, Joe Rogan came out with a good little video, and this kind of leans into exactly what we're just chatting about there.
Yeah, so did you watch the video, Jay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, powerful stuff. I think, he's talking about as soon as you give politicians power, in fact, any kind of power, they find new reasons to use it. I mean, we have to protect those freedoms at all costs. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I will share that with you in just a moment. Mr. Producer, are you ready to cue up the video? Fantastic. Let's see it.
As soon as you give politicians power, any kind of power that didn't exist previously, if they can figure out a way to force you into carrying something that lets you enter businesses or lets you do this or lets businesses open, historically, they are not going to give that power up. They find new reasons to use.
I'll be back.
We have to protect those freedoms at all costs, whether you agree with people's choices or not, because it is the foundation that this country was founded on. Freedom. This idea of freedom, there's so many people that think it's frivolous, it's not important, it's not the main thing that we should be focused on, but it is the literal structure that allows this country to be so fucking amazing. Every single country that's ever existed other than the United States, up until 1776, every fucking country that has ever existed was run by dictators. All of them. This is the first experiment in self-government that actually worked, and it created the greatest superpower the world's ever known. It created the greatest cultural machine, the greatest machine of art and creativity and innovation right fucking here. And how did it do that? It did it through freedom. And as soon as you see something, anything that comes along and inhibits your freedom, you should be very cautious about that. You should be very suspicious. Because anything that comes along that can inhibit your freedom is, by definition, anti-American.
So that sound may be distorted a little bit, just because the copyright and everything, we had to cut out some background music. But what he shared is so powerful. And I think it's even better coming from a guy like like Joe Rogan, who he's not really right or left. He finds a lot of middle ground in his beliefs. He just mainly feels that do whatever you want to do, right? If you want to vote for Joe Biden, vote for Joe Biden. If you want to vote for Donald Trump or whoever else, vote for Donald Trump or whoever else. But just do what you want to be able to do, right? And what did you think of some of that? Oh, go ahead,
I was
Chris.
just going to say, like, the whole thing is about freedom. And we're getting to a point where we need to really dial in and start addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak, which is there is a large group of people who are trying to tell us what our freedom should look like. And that's not how freedom works at all. It's insane to even think that government is going to come in and tell us how we should live our lives and how we can best get along. And, it's like they said in that video, as soon as you give the politicians power, any kind of power, they're going to find the reasons to use it. They're going to expand on it. They're going to take those and they're going to, you got to protect your freedom. Right, Brandon? I mean, like we've had extensive conversations about this. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's, well said. I think Joe Rogan is fascinating because he, like you said, Chad, is someone who started, maybe more left, living in California. I think there'd be a lot of people maybe argue that side. And he's really come toward the middle. Some say he's gone to the right. And like you said, he tries to take a centrist position. But I think he's kind of realized, as have many, especially over the last year or two, where the direction of the country is headed, which is less freedom and more government control, more cradle to grave, issues. And I think the thing at the end of the day, I'm a big person that believes in not putting Band-Aids on bullet holes. And I think I got into politics literally as a child. My parents were very into politics and history and law. I was a military buff growing up. And it was literally, I was 13 in the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. And I remember being in 8th grade and arguing with kids in 8th grade about it. And and it's
awesome.
It was something that everything was always about. It was more political for me back then, probably. But as I got older, into my teens and my early 20s, I realized, man, there's such a problem here. The 08, 09 financial crisis was really the huge turning point, the inflection point for me, realizing there's a game being played. And if you don't understand, there's a political side, there's a money side. And if you only understand the political side, which is most of the country or most of the world, they just understand it's either my religion or it's politics is my religion. I'm either agnostic or atheist into a religion, but politics has become your religion. If you don't understand the money side of that whole equation, you don't understand what's going on. I honestly, and again, I know we're going to get into this more, but everything comes down to the Federal Reserve. Everything comes down to the corruption of money and the 7 stages of empire, and everything can be traced back to that. Unsound money. You can say, I wrote in my journal the other day, I mean, losing God and losing faith on the God side, on the supernatural side, and then on the human side, it's corrupting your money or unsound money. That's the perfect concoction for destruction of freedom and really the destruction of humanity. So I know we'll get into more of that, but that's at the end of the day, it's trying to what's going on, because the politics to me nowadays is very surface level and it's very just he said, she said, Donald Trump's a bad guy, mean tweets, oh, Biden fell going up the stairs, and so we're going to make fun of each other. But it's not getting to the root of the issue. And the root of the issue, truly, we all can agree, 9 out of 10 of us, it's freedoms. We all want freedom. And what corrupts freedom? Well, it's more government, more control, and people telling others what to do, and the corruption of money. And when you don't have sound money, a la the dollar, fiat currencies, cryptocurrencies, whatever, we can get into more of it. But that's the crux of where we're at and why many of us can't agree on anything. So
you're saying a lot there, Brandon.
I mean, nice intro. Welcome to the podcast. Let's go.
Load it up.
Right, that is fantastic. So you mentioned one thing that, to put you on the spot here, you said the seven empires of money or something like that?
Empire. Yeah.
7 stages of an empire. Can you dive into that a little more? I'm fascinated.
You're just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have them off the top of my head. I mean, we can Google them really quick and throw them up there, but it's pretty common knowledge, but it's like, if you look into any macroeconomics, you study any of the guys out there. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of them, the Brent Johnsons and the Stephen Van Meters and the Jim Rogers and the Robert Kiyosaki's and the George Gammons of the world, and on and on and on. They'll all talk about the 7 stages of empire. A lot of what they talk about is the 7 stages, where you have, and I'm kind of here, but if someone wants to bring it up, the first stage is, basically you create a sound money and everything's great. And then you kind of go through this progression of, oh, now we're going into this, creating this, war machine. Oh, we got to put this machine to war because now we built this war machine. And then we got to corrupt the money to then do that and print, war is only possible. And again, I'm a military buff, but actually a very big wake up call for me over just really the last couple of years. I love the military. I wanted to be a fighter pilot or a Navy SEAL my entire life. And it just wasn't in the cards. And realizing like Dwight Eisenhower's farewell address, talking about the military industrial complex and understanding what that meant. And then again, like George Washington's farewell address, talking about getting rid of the two parties. You don't a two-party system. And then you had, I think that was obviously a very pivotal, a very, just a timely thing. And then also Dwight Eisenhower was talking about the military industrial complex and how they run everything. And you look at, the standing and having this, well, we had to put that to war. So you had to corrupt money. War is only possible because they corrupted the money, and corrupting the money, long story long, makes it, gives you the power to transfer the wealth from all the people and the government. So then they can pay off all these debts over time with diluted money. So, and then it goes into the people eventually, like stages 6 and 7, people don't trust the money anymore and everything resets, which is basically where we're at. We're obviously at stage 6 or 7 of corrupting the money, going unsound money, removing 1971. We removed from the gold standard. We removed the dollar pegged from gold. So it's no longer worth anything. It's just piles of paper. And the Federal Reserve, like I said, in 1913 started all that. We've tried, this is the third Federal Reserve we've had. And, you go through this 100-year game of corrupting the printing currency, I should say, printing currency. Money is only gold and silver. And it's in the Constitution. It's in, it's in the Bible. It's for 5,000 years, gold and silver. So that's probably the first big thing, is understanding what true money is. That's the stages, and everyone goes through it. The Roman Empire went through it. Spain, Spanish Empire, the Greeks go through this empire, and they go fight each other, and they debase their currency. They put copper in the gold and silver, and then eventually they fall apart, and then we're left with the ruins of the Colosseum, or the ruins of the Pantheon, or whatever, the treasury in Greece, and we built these unbelievable things, and then it goes to ruin. The politicians, the elites, corrupted the money over time, and it's just constant, over and over and over again life cycle, right? We've heard of the fourth turning and all these things that are going on. Well, it's just life cycles, and we get into these routines.
Brandon, what are some of your thoughts on the vaccine and how this rolls out and things like that? And by the way, you have the floor to share whatever you want throughout this whole show, just so you know, unfiltered, unedited. Well, it might be edited.
Uncensored.
Censored. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you guys more. It's anti-vax, really don't care either way, to be quite honest with you. I mean, people are going to do what they want with their lives. I have vaccines. My kids have vaccines. But when you have zero to little evidence, or zero to little studies, history on any of these that people are taking just willy-nilly, quite honestly, that's mind-blowing to me. And like you said, Dates, I mean, it's probably completely fine. At the end of the day, it probably is fine, but I think there's more to it. And I think the point all of us are making is the freedom, the loss of freedom, and what are they setting you up for? It's a construct. It's the seatbelt law. It's the Patriot Act. It's this and this. It's what are they setting you up for eventually? And that's where this all leads. And again, Germany, the 1920s, 1930s, Germany didn't happen in 1 week. That happened over 10, 20 years. And that's exactly how this has played out. I mean, we are verbatim following the steps they have taken and they took to become what we all know and despise. And we are well down that road. It goes along the 7 stages of empire, and what have you. So that's, people can make decisions for the best for themselves and the people around them. I try to stay healthy, try to work out, try to do simple things to not have to deal with anything. I mean, I don't think I haven't taken a flu shot in like 10 years because I take care of my body, and but you don't see people going around and shunning me for not taking a flu shot. But that's just the choice I've made because I don't need it. I don't get sick in that way because I take care of myself. So everyone's got to do their own thing, but that's life. You take a risk going out, like we already kind of noted, driving a car. You take a risk. Am I going to show up at my destination or not? And everyone's got to make that decision. With stepping out, or we can just live in our bed all day in a bubble and just sit in bed all day and do nothing. Which is, if you ever watched Wall-E, then yeah, I guess that's probably the way the world's going. It will eventually happen. We'll be floating around in our little pods with our computers and being 500 pounds. So that's the decision. Crossroads.
Can't wait.
As long as there's beer and pizza available. That's all right with me.
Funnel it into me.
It might be shut down.
Yeah, do I have to wear my mask when I answer the door for the pizza delivery guy?
Well,
come into my house or my bubble.
My bubble.
So Jim Rohn always, one of my favorite personal development guys of all time, Jim Rohn, always said, would you rather live 100 years safe and secure in the corner, someone coming and giving you 3 meals a day, but you just sit there in the corner with your head in your lap all day for 100 years? And I can tell you could live 100 years, or would you rather live 30 years full of adventure, going out, driving your car, going to skydive, business, raising a family, taking risks, or you go boating, going jet skiing? Would you rather do those things, or would you rather, trade off? What would you rather do? Just sit in the corner for 100 years and do nothing, but you live 3 times as long? And it's amazing what the decisions I think most people would make when you pose that question to them.
That's it. So with that said, I think we should roll into that was becoming a pretty good segue, I think, into the rant here. Now, it's your week for the rant, right, Chris?
That's correct, sir. But
gotcha. So, go ahead. I think we're on the same page here.
You know what? It's funny because, you made fun of me last week on last week's show for not having a beer ready, but I do have a beer ready this time. And this rant is going to be brought to you by M43. Well, there we go. M43.
Yes, hold it right in front of your face.
Yeah, it is an India Pale Ale, 6.8% alcohol by volume. And you know what? It's got a nice citrusy flavor to it. Let's take a little sip here. Everybody knows the rules. 1 sip. Everyone knows the rules. Yeah.
Hopefully we don't get hit for copyright infringement on 1 sip. Everybody
You know what? Maybe, but I would just tell Dave Portnoy I love him, and I donated money to his charity for all the businesses over the last year. So hopefully he cuts me a break. Anyway, rant time. Now, Chad, I know that you were watching this game. Brandon, I don't know if you were or not. You were probably doing something more responsible. But I am 44 years old and a diehard Lions fan. Detroit Lions. And we're in a rebuilding year. It's noted. We had, high draft picks every year for the last decade. So we're constantly rebuilding. We're owned by the Ford family. And we were playing the Baltimore Ravens, who were in town at Ford Field on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, where the Lions were getting pretty much manhandled in the first half. But then they came out in the second half, and their offense was clicking. They were playing some good defense. And wouldn't you know it, they managed to work their way back into a position where they were able to actually take the lead. Now, I want to set the stage for you because anybody listening to this, I know this goes national. We're on YouTube. We're on all these different, things. And so you might not really understand the plight of the Detroit Lion fan. And so just let me allow just a moment to share this bitterness with you. And maybe we can all, get on the same page and enjoy a nice Thanksgiving together coming up here. But anyway, Sunday afternoon, we're down by, I believe it was just 2 points. It was 16-14, right? 16-14. And the Lions are moving the ball. They get the ball with 5 minutes and 43 seconds left. And you're thinking, oh gosh, this is just not going to end well. But they go right down the field and they get all the way to 1st and 10 from about the 12 or 13. So they can still get a first down if they kept pushing hard. But they did, in my opinion, the right thing. What you would do strategically. You're a chip shot, away from being able to take the lead. So they used the 2-minute warning. Well, the 2-minute warning came. They forced Baltimore to use their timeouts by simply running the ball. And everyone in the stadium and everyone in Baltimore, Maryland, and everyone in the country knew that the Detroit Lions were going to run the ball. And so they get tackled, and the clock is running. They call timeout. The clock is running. They call timeout. They get the clock all the way down to 1:04. Well, they kick the field goal, right? You're thinking, oh my gosh. Now the Baltimore Ravens are going to get the ball back. They're down 17-16. And I literally, Chad, I went on the line. I went on the Facebook, and I wrote, I just have a feeling that Lamar is going to bring back the Lions losing in some epic fashion. You know, it's 2021. We have a new head coach, Dan Campbell. I mean, if you're listening, which you're not, but it's okay if you do. Maybe some more of your friends will play that. You don't like the phrase same old Lions. You didn't like it last week. You didn't like being told same old Lions. Same old Lions who only have one playoff win since 1957. They won one time in 1991. We've had two of the greatest players in the history of the game come through our organization in that period of time. And we're talking about Barry Sanders and Megatron, who was just enshrined in the Hall of Fame. And we've got just an unbelievable opportunity to turn and change the culture here. Or do we? Because you know what happened? Chad, they got the ball. 25-yard line. First play. Oh, sacked. Lamar Jackson got sacked. The clock's running. Second play was an incomplete pass. Third down. He got sacked again. We're going to 4th down and 19. 4th down and 19. All the Lions got to do is keep the Baltimore Ravens from getting 19 yards, and they're going to win this game. By the way, the clock is ticking. Tick, 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 tick. All the way down to 35 seconds. And what do you know? Lamar Jackson drops a bomb right in the center of the field, and they run all the way up. They get it all the way to the 50-yard line. The 50-yard line. I think it was the 49 of the Lions. You've got half the field to go. They run one play, incomplete pass. There's only 4 seconds left on the clock. What do? Well, we do what the Lions always do. We suffer at the hands of bad refereeing. Because wouldn't you know, on that play, there was a delay of game. The clock struck 0. And it went to 0 for over 2 seconds. And the ref did not call that. That would have backed them up 5 yards. Now, that may or may not seem like a big deal. Maybe at the time it didn't seem like a big deal. But it does in Lions land. It does because this is what happens. The Baltimore Ravens lined up for a field goal. 66 yards. Tucker going for an NFL record. Never been done before in the 100+ years of the NFL. But you know what? Not this Sunday. This Sunday, they're playing the Lions. And you know, they snap the ball. It's up. That ball is twirling end over end on a high arc. And it comes down and it lands where? Right on the crossbar. Dead center. Crossbar. Up. And it's good, baby. Lions lose 19-17. In the most epic of fashions, it is one of the most unbelievable ways that you could possibly lose a game. And it surprised everyone except for anyone in Detroit because we're used to it. And you know what, Coach? It's called SOL. Same old Lions. Rant over. Let's drink.
See, but this is the big moment, right? Is it the same old Lions? Because you got a coach in there who is intentionally fighting the status quo, intentionally fighting the same old Lions. That's why I like him, right? He doesn't want it to be the same old Lions, and they play really good for a team that on paper is not that good. They don't have a starting defensive back who's worth a lick. They just released who most would say their best linebacker going into the year. They have an okay defensive line. Their offensive line's solid. Their quarterback was definitely a downgrade. They don't have a number one receiver. They don't even really have a number two receiver.
Look,
and the running backs are pretty solid. So they don't have a great team. And that guy is pushing every day to fight the status quo, to not give in to the dark side.
He's just playing fantasy football. And this is what they did. They traded Stafford to get the Rams' number one overall pick in the next year. Well, I mean, they're literally doing fantasy league. The Lions are going to get the number one overall pick, and then they're doing a waterfall draft where they're going to get the number one, the 32nd, and then the 33rd, or they start at the back of the waterfall of the second round, and then all the way back down again. So they're going to have 1, 32, 33, and then whatever the last one in the second round is. I mean, it's like they're playing fantasy football with their draft. It's stupid.
It's perfect if it works.
Screw the Lions. And Brandon's probably like, oh my God, this guy's angry. He works with us? Oh my God.
Hey, no, it's all like you said, the same old Lions. I mean, that's the leadership, right? Leadership number one, but number two, it's the attitude. If you, again, go back to Band-Aids on bullet holes, until you root out the causes of the problems, they'll never change. That's it. That's it. I mean, that's all.
Brandon, you were a professional athlete. Wouldn't that drive you nuts being part of an organization that is that pathetic?
It would, absolutely. And it's, like I said, it's leadership on the day. It's all leadership. It's from ownership. And that's constant in the last, 70 years or whatever it's been. And they're the one thing that's been there the entire time. And things will not change until the leadership changes. It's like that in any organization. It's like that in the military, in business, sports, doesn't matter. So that's why you have guys like Steve Yzerman or guys like Michael Jordan win championships, because they were leaders. And that's why you have some guys who never win, because they're just not leaders. And that's just the way of the world. That's how things work.
Speaking of Michael Jordan, that's why he's my favorite athlete of all time. He is not the most gifted basketball player to ever grace the court. There's people who have shot better than him. There's people who can jump higher than him. There's people who have played defense better than him. But guess what? No one has won better than him in the common era. Now, I think Bill Russell, correct me if I'm wrong, won the most championships ever, right? But when we talk about the modern era of basketball, right, people always try to compare LeBron to Michael Jordan or Kobe. They throw him in there. But the difference was Michael Jordan never went to a Game 7 in the finals, right? Michael Jordan won the basketball game. The Bulls, their sixth championship, were the oldest team in the NBA. The oldest team in the NBA, but it didn't matter, right? Because
experience wins championships.
Making their last dance.
Look, here's what experience will do for you. It knows how to solve problems. And it's just like this story we've got here about this couple who got married on the Canadian border, my man. Did you see this thing? This couple got engaged 6 months ago. But, one lives in Canada and one lives in the United States, right? So how are you going to do this? I mean, they just problem solve, right? So they get married right on the border. Like, she's like standing on one side, he's on the other. It's crazy.
Just think about when everything else is more important to the government besides you, right? Everything else is more important to the government.
That's you guys are hitting on something huge, which is the shaming going on, which you guys almost touched on earlier, which is the shaming going on for people like many of us that are pro-vaccine, but just don't take kindly to government ramming things down your throat when there's no evidence other than, hey, you'll get free cheeseburger and lottery tickets if you take this vaccine. And you have all these people. I just got a mail the other day from some society in Michigan or something about, business owners. My business has been shut down because of COVID, and you need to do your part so I can get back to life. And this whole narrative being shaped that it's unvaccinated people's fault that life can't get back to normal, when in reality, every single human being should be walking to the Capitol in a peaceful protest, protesting the politicians who are the ones who have shut things down. It's not the unvaccinated people that have shut down, it's the politicians. You and I have no ability to shut anything down. We don't have any, we can't click a button, pass a law. We have no ability to do any of that. And it's just outright insanity that's the narrative, and people just lockstep. That's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, and the wild part about it is the government really doesn't have that power either, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that talks about the government all of a sudden being granted these magical powers to mandate that people should do exactly what they say because they were elected into a role, right? Joe Biden has no authority to say that every government employee should take the vaccine. He has zero authority over that.
I'll go one step further. And again, it's because history majors nowadays, U.S. history, you get a degree in history and you're not even required to take one U.S. history class. We have lost our way so much. It's the concept over and over again. You can't have arguments with people when they have literally zero reality of what's going on or how the country is founded or any history at all. You can't argue with someone who has no basis in reality. That's literally impossible. When you have smallpox, which people have heard a lot about smallpox a year and a half, go research whatever's left on the internet. Go research. I fortunately have a lot of the books from different founding eras, different founding fathers. I have numerous journals from them, things like that. The Federalist Papers are a great thing to read, and if you can get your hands on that about why they created the Constitution, the argument for the Constitution, and the smallpox. I think it was like 7 times different smallpox cases, pandemics and epidemics broke out during the Revolution, and the founding fathers wrote about it, and they said no, like we cannot say what people can or cannot do, and that killed 1 in 3 people. Didn't matter what age, what happened, killed 1 in 3 people, and they said no. Like, we have no authority to tell people what they can or can't do to shut down life and shut down society, and yet here people are taking whatever facts they want and using to shape whatever narrative they want. And I think until you get to this point where we're all dealing with the same set of history or knowledge of facts, you're going to see this get worse and worse and worse, correlated with sound money, because that's why you have people in the streets rioting. They don't know why their food costs are rising. So it's this cataclysmic collision coming on full course of not knowing history, whether it's money, currency, politics. It just, when you don't have any basis in that, you're just grasping. You're like the drowning person in the water, grasping for air because you don't know why anything's going on around you. And that's what 90% of society, unfortunately, is dealing with right now. They have no idea why they're being lied to. They don't know they're being lied to. They don't know why their money is corrupted. They don't know why they can't afford. Their wife has to go to work as well as they do. They don't know why all these things have to be done because no one can afford anything anymore.
Well, that, and people think that they should just be able to get a job. That it goes hand in hand. I think that there's an entitlement that they should just be able to get paid, and that someone else is just going to take care of them. And it's this idea that
have a career.
Yeah, like, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get good grades, and then somebody's going to give me a job. Well,
this goes back.
I guess
to,
so.
And again, yeah, and this goes back to another thing too. Again, something else for everyone to look up, which is FDR's second Bill of Rights. And he offered this up. One of the original progressives, you had Teddy Roosevelt, you had Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and he offered up the second Bill of Rights, which was one of the big Fabian socialist Marxist things they wanted to do, which was everyone is guaranteed healthcare, everyone's guaranteed a house, everyone's guaranteed a living wage and a job and all these things. When we got away from natural law, it was the beginnings of getting away from freedom and people being responsible for themselves. Instead, the government taking that over, which another thing to look into as well as the Great Depression itself in the church. The churches, I think, one of my big things against the church, I'm a devout Catholic. One of my big things against the church, though, is they gave up their to take care of the poor. And in the Great Depression, they got very worried and scared that they couldn't do enough, and they gave up in the air and said, hey, you know what, government, we can't do enough. You can do more. And the government was waiting for that day and said, yes, you're right. Thank you. This is the day we've been waiting for. Now it's our turn. ever since then, Federal Reserve and then the Great Depression, though 10, 20-year span was game over. That was lights out. That was the foundation for what we're seeing 100 years later. So everyone wants to argue Trump and Biden, but yet the problem stemmed from 100 years ago, and no one's even close to the root of the actual.
Yeah, I mean, if we learned about the true history and these things that have occurred, right, then you would hope that at least things would be different moving forward, right? But that isn't the case, because instead they would rather push this narrative of critical race theory, right? Or of the fact that slavery started in 1619, I think the year is, instead of looking at what actually happened in history, which is the fact that the U.S. was the first country, or one of the first countries, to abolish slavery, right?
Yep.
Think of when Abraham Lincoln made the proclamation, right? What if he didn't do that? What if the U.S. continued to promote slavery, right? Because slavery still exists in the world, whether people like it or not. So think if they flip that on its head, right? Slavery would still be going on at the same rate that it was, if not worse. But the fact that the men who created this country, the men who found the country, and when I say men, I'm not just referring to white males who had privilege, right? I'm referring to all men and women who were created equal in the eyes of a God. Is that
those weird documents, right?
Yeah, right. When they did that, right, it sparked a movement. That's why it's called the revolution, right? Because that's why we have at our hands everything we have in the present, is because a few people took a leap of faith. They said they didn't want tyranny anymore, right? No taxation without representation. And they said that we're going to go through all of the different variations of a smallpox virus, right? We're going to go through the bloodshed. We're going to not sacrifice our safety for our freedoms. And that's why we're here today. And if we continue, even if it's just wearing a mask in a grocery store, right? Even if it's something simple that seems harmless in the moment, right? Even if it's having to marry your significant other across the border, which sounds stupid when I say it out loud. If we continue to let these little things just go, what's going to happen next, right? I mean, you even have a Target commercial, right? Where in the Target commercial, these people who are with each other are wearing masks. It's in a commercial.
Yeah, was that intentional?
I mean, you didn't get tested before the commercial?
Is that what they're trying to message? Is that the message, that everybody should wear masks?
Yeah, because there's no way that you let there's no way that you let two people start in a commercial in a time like this if you're so woke, and then they have COVID, but you're like, I know you have COVID, so just go ahead and mask up, just so you can be safe. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You know, that's the same reason. Like, here's the biggest problem, Chad, is that it's like, why do people get the flu shot? Well, it's to protect themselves. If they are considered at risk for getting the flu and having serious side effects from the flu or possible death, well, you should probably get the flu shot. Maybe, do what you got to do. But, like I know you put in the show notes here that it's funny because of influenza is also a coronavirus. There's 19 strains of this. That's why it's called COVID-19, because it comes from China. I'm just.
That's why it's the Chinese virus.
The Chinese virus right there. But, that's the thing, man. People just don't understand. They don't even look at any of this stuff and how it affects their freedoms. And I think that's what we're all, putting together here for this whole show, is the fact that where our freedoms are at risk. And it's a scary time, because there's nobody who's really standing up and fighting for it. Like, if you watch the anything about the revolution, like we were talking about, and the fighting, the standing up to tyranny. I mean, there were riots. They were like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Enough is enough. Now, what's interesting is in that time, the speed of communication traveled differently. Like these guys got together and drafted a letter, that was basically an F-off letter, i.e. the Declaration of Independence. That's like, we are declaring our independence from you. It's like the ultimate breakup letter. And we're going to send it to you via snail mail across the ocean. Carrier over the Atlantic Ocean. It's going to take 3 months to get there. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, hey, we're going to send this off. Okay, we're free. And then 3 months later, King George III is reading this and being like, the hell these colonies thinking they are. They're not free. I own them. This is ours. Send in the troops. And by the time they send the troops, you had a 6-month head start of being able to prepare, knowing that that was coming, and getting everything lined up. But we can't do that now. I mean, the speed of communication, you're like, oh, I'm being oppressed, so to speak. What do I do? How do I handle this? But I think even the police are conflicted. Like our own forces, I mean, a lot of the chiefs have come out and said, we're not going to enforce these rules, when a lot of these vaccine mandates are coming into place. They're just not going to enforce them. And so it's creating a conflict within our society that there is a modern day revolution going on where there is a strong contingent of people who are like, I might get the vaccine, but I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. In fact, I will never say what my vaccine status is on the show. You know why? Because it's none of your damn business. I'll tell you what I think.
Isn't that a violation of HIPAA laws too?
Well, that's the thing. You might draw your own conclusions. You might be like, well, he hasn't done it yet, or maybe he did. I don't know. Well, you know what? I don't care if you guess. It's not up for you. Go, you do you, I'll do me. How's that? But you don't get to tell me what to do.
If you can still share COVID, and if you can still get COVID, what's it matter if you're vaccinated, or what's it matter if the other person is vaccinated or not? Because if you can do the same thing in terms of sharing the virus and getting the virus,
asking too many common sense questions.
Right. If you can do that same thing, if you have the vaccine or not, what is the difference for other people? The only difference is how it affects you. That is the only difference.
Yep. I mean, why don't you tell everybody what's going on in New York City right now, Chad?
It's crazy because I just hate New York. I wish New York and California would somehow break off and float into the ocean, and maybe one of them sneaks through Panama Canal, and they just join up and go live with each other. Except for the people in probably upstate New York. I think most of those people tend to be a little less progressive. But, the fact that the new governor, I don't know how to say her name. Her first name's Kathy Hochul. I don't know. But she says that the unvaccinated aren't listening to God. That's a strong statement.
Yeah.
So you must know what God's talking about.
Or
make that statement, right?
Welcome to the world. Most people don't listen to God. If they did, we probably wouldn't be in the mess that we are in.
Yeah. So, her plan is to take these unvaccinated healthcare workers who don't want to get vaccinated. So you have healthcare workers who are experts in their field, right? They work in that job every day. Healthcare workers who, when there wasn't a vaccine, had to show up to work anyway.
Heroes.
Yeah. Right. They had to show up to work anyway.
Risking their life.
Even the ones who didn't work on an infectious disease floor had to show up to work anyway and help those, right? And work those floors. And now they're being told that if you don't get vaccinated, you don't have a job anymore. And not only that, we've already come up with a plan to replace you. So we don't really care about you. We'll just deploy the National Guard, right? Because the National Guard has to be vaccinated. Because it's a branch of the military, according to Uncle Joe. What do you think about? Yeah, what do you think about some of that, Brandon? The fact that there's these vaccine mandates for certain sects of people, right? The military, but then there's not vaccine mandates for the ones who get government handouts.
Yeah, it's the slippery slope has been used over the years, many times, for many different issues. But again, that's why we are here now where we're at, because we continually, and again, The Fourth Turning is a great book. If anyone hasn't read it, go read it, because it really explains a lot as to, where there's a lot of cycles in life that are convening. We're habituous creatures. We continually fall into the same traps over and over and over and over again. But to answer your question more specifically, it's just division. I mean, it's all it is. Chaos. Division creates chaos, and chaos, invites government ability to, and welcomes it to, pass their laws, pass their powers. As what's his name, Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, right? No, never let a good crisis go to waste. But it really came from Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Again, another great book to have on your shelf, so you can pass down to your kids before they erase that too. And it was in the 60s or 70s he wrote it, and he trained all of them. He trained all, the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, Hillary Clinton, all these people. He trained all of them, and that was their manifesto. One of them, which was the Ford, I believe, was dedicated to Lucifer, first rebel. And if that doesn't show you and tell you what's what, I don't know what does. I mean, again, like if we don't go to the root of what's going on here, it's very hard to understand what's going on. And again, to answer your question, is division. It's, e pluribus unum, unity, right? Like that's how we stand. Why we've won all the wars up to World War II. That's why we always came together, because it was unity. And when you divide that, when the communists came in, they said, hey, that's why Ronald Reagan switched from being a Democrat to being a Republican. He saw what was going on in Hollywood. He saw how the communists were coming in and taking it over. And he switched because of what he had seen firsthand in the Screen Actors Guild and leading that. And I think it was in the 50s, with McCarthy and all that, they read into the record like the 50 or 60 points that the Russians and the communists everywhere were going to infiltrate America with these 60 bullet points. And again, another thing you can easily Google nowadays still, to this day, they read it into congressional record. We're going to do all these 60 things. We're going to infiltrate Hollywood culture. We're going to destroy the family, the nuclear family. We're going to promote promiscuity. We're going to, confuse and invite chaos and division. And that's, again, now we have 50, 60, 70 years of that playing out, and no one sees it. No one thinks to go and look at these things and say, and then actually stand up and speak out against any of these things. But it's all of our faults, right? It's our grandparents, it's our parents, it's our fault for not standing up and doing a little bit of homework. I mean, it takes 3 seconds to do a lot of things we've talked about, and like look them up and just know the history, but yet no one seems to do it. So division, that's the answer, Chad. I guess it's purposeful to create division.
Yeah. And the hard part to standing up, right? The hard part to some of this is when you're in a social setting, no one really knows enough, because not everyone studies history like you do. I mean, you know way more about any of this than I do. So, to know just a little bit and be in a social setting and stand up and or just make the statement that, hey, this is wrong. Well, now you better be prepared to defend yourself, right? Because the moment that someone says, what do you mean it's wrong? Don't you want everyone to be safer? And you're like, well, what do you mean safer? Like, you can still spread it, right? But then the moment that you start to question these things, people on the left, progressives, liberals, they're so good at the moment that you challenge what they think, right? And Jen Psaki does it so great. The moment you start to challenge them, they immediately stop talking about what you're referring to, and it immediately turns into how bad of a person you are, right? Like, what's his name? Peter Doocy, I think, from a Fox News reporter questioned her about immigrants coming across the border. And, and some of them are pregnant women, this, that, or the other. And Jen Psaki looks at him and goes, what, you think it's, or you don't think that we should take care of a pregnant woman? You don't agree with women who are pregnant and that they shouldn't have access to the best health out there and, the freedom to whatever? And he's like, no, I didn't say that at all. That's absolutely not what we're talking about. But they take things like that, and the moment that they can turn it into an identity politics, they'll jump right on it, and they make you look like a terrible person, even though all you said was wearing a mask doesn't do anything.
Yeah, no, it's well said. It's and they done this forever, right? They're brilliant salespeople and they're brilliant marketers, and they appeal to human emotion. I think one of the most telling things is, I truly believe that the progressive side of the aisle, a lot of people, 9 out of 10. Thing we talked about this earlier, we all want freedom, and it's probably more than it's probably 9.5 out of 10 people want the same thing. There's some crazies in there, they're the 0.5 or the 5%, I should say, but most of us, we all want freedom, and they are just brilliant marketers, and they use the ability, that human emotion, and because as Chris and Chad, you both know, I mean, sales is emotion. That's what it is. It's we justify with logic after a purchase, but we don't generally purchase something because of logic. Like, oh, that makes sense for me to grab this new car. No, it never makes sense to buy a new car unless it's like burning on the side of the highway. We just like the new car. I like the Maserati. Like that's why I bought it. It's the same thing. And they use, the right tends to use logic, and it's a left brain, right brain. And then the left, they use, or progressive side, they use human emotion. They did this, 10, 15, 20 years ago with George Bush. And there's a million examples you could use, but this is one of my favorites of they clean it. They Republicans or the people on the right hate clean air. They hate, they want to dirty the water. It's like, yeah, no, you're right. I breathe the same air, but I want dirty air and dirty water. Of course. Like that's exactly what I want. Or, they want to throw mom and grandma off the cliff because they don't want socialized medicine back in 2009 with Obamacare. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I hate women, and I don't want elderly people to have health care because I don't have any elderly people or women in my life. I don't have a wife or two daughters or a mother and a mother-in-law. But people take that as gospel. Again, they don't critically think. Critical thinking is gone. And I think maybe we're getting to a root cause of what's going on here as well, with the school system being corrupted over the last 100 years. Goes right into what we've been saying, getting the root of the problem, when there's no critical thinking or thinking at all. And it's just taking, this emotion-based, logic to everything. Then you again, we see what we get. And like you said, Chad, it's very hard to come back at people who are just emotionally screaming at you or emotionally, telling you this and that. Well, you hate this and that. Well, so of course I don't. What you're saying makes zero sense. What you're saying won't work. And those conversations, they just unfortunately have muted and silenced many of us, whether it's actually feeling like we can't say anything. They just get you off the internet now or actually censor you. It's not on their side, and they just want it to be an emotion-based thing. And that's what they're going to leave it as. And that's it.
Well, that's why that they're saying, by 2025 that we're going to own nothing and we'll be happy. It's being called the Great Reset. And we're going to culminate this show into this final topic. But here we go.
I feel like this is Brandon's.
That was the whole
Brandon's moment.
This is
well, I'm excited for this.
It's definitely interesting because this was an aha moment, and I hope it not just for me, but for everyone listening, and I hope everybody shares this, segment in this podcast, and really, 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 really thinks about what just happened. That the spokesperson for the White House, Jen Psaki, stood up there as the representative for the Democrat-run government with the trillions and trillions of dollars that they have on the table that they want to spend for God only knows what. I mean, there's a million things. I mean, there's $3 billion in there for all kinds. It's insane. But at the end of the day, they're literally saying, it's not going to cost us anything. Why, Chad? Why, you ask? How, the reasonable person, when someone says, well, we're going to spend all this money, but it's not going to cost us anything, the reasonable person goes, really? Tell me more about that. How would that work? Well, here's our plan. We're going to raise the taxes for those who aren't paying taxes, i.e. the mega wealthy and the corporations. That's what we're going to do. And the light bulb that goes off for the rest of us is they don't get it. They don't understand how America works. They don't understand how the companies work. You don't get to just implement taxes on those and not expect that to be passed on to the consumer, which is, i.e., the rest of the citizenry of the country. They don't understand it. She said that would be unfair and absurd that companies would do that. And oh, by the way, the consumers won't stand for it. Oh, really? Well, where else are we going to get our milk? Where else are we going to get our lumber? Where else are we going to get all the things that are increasing with inflation? Oh, yeah, well, you're not going to, affect us if we make under 400,000? Great.
Right, because what people don't understand is that a majority of these large corporations are public held companies, right? So their bottom line when it comes to annual revenue reviews or annual board meetings is to see that bottom dollar go up, right?
Yeah.
We want to see that we had positive earnings growth year over year. So if you raise taxes on the companies that bring in the most, or the people who bring in the most, who, by the way, account for, Mr. Producer, if you could pull up the exact number, but I want to say like the wealthiest Americans, the top 1% are responsible for 80% of the taxes paid.
No, I think it's 41%.
40. So still, I mean,
Yep.
an overwhelming majority in terms of a 1% amount of people. So you have these companies who are all about earnings growth, right? So now if you take $10 from a company, they now have to bring in $11 more, right? Because if a company who is publicly held, the CEO of that company is losing money every year, what happens to him? He doesn't have a job anymore.
Yeah, he's deemed irresponsible steward of the capital that he was given.
Exactly. So if they're taxed and they have to give away $10 more, now they have to bring in $11. So how does a company bring in revenue? Well, any company either offers a product or a service. That means they have to raise the price of whatever they're selling to offset the taxes. But now taxes are all percentage based. So it's not just getting another dollar. They have to make enough to also offset the additional taxes that are being taken out of that. So even though you're not taxed at a higher rate as a middle class earner, your dollar that used to be able to go $1 now goes 50 cents. So now you have to make $2 to make up for that $1. So whether they're taking money out of your pocket or not, it's coming somewhere, right? Matter is neither created nor destroyed. Guess what? Money is not just randomly created and stuffed into your pocket, right? There's always a give and take.
And here's the other thing too. It's the complete disregarding of the fact that those companies hire employees that, what do they do? Oh yeah, hold it, what? Yep, they pay taxes. Oh my God. So you're employing somebody who has a wage and the company actually pays part of the taxes. You know, when you hire somebody for $15 an hour, okay, they don't earn $15 an hour. Well, actually, the company doesn't pay $15 an hour. It actually pays closer to $18 an hour because $3 of it goes to taxes. And then that employee out of their $15 pays about $3 in taxes. And so just on that, there's $6 per hour on a $15 an hour earner that are going to taxes. Well, where did that come from?
Yeah, and
Jen?
because taxes.
Hey, Jen, where did that come from?
Because taxes are all percentage based. The more everything goes up, the more taxes they collect because it's all percentage based. We live in a progressive tax system, right? The more you make, the more you pay in taxes by a percentage.
So it begs the question, and even Biden came out in the last couple weeks, or I think it was even the last couple days, and said or suggested that the IRS start tracking deposits or transactions that exceeded $600. That's on your Venmo. That's on your, all these other, sites that you can transfer money, Zelle, PayPal, the trading of currency and for goods and services. He wants now the IRS to audit that and then have people start paying taxes on it because they're not getting enough. They got to pay for stuff. So here's the thing. When does crypto become a viable option? When are we going to be able to utilize and leverage crypto, and what's the future of that? That's where I'm really interested to hear Brandon's take.
So before Brandon jumps into this, because I know this is going to be good, to set him up for the Great Reset and some of this other stuff he's going to chat about with crypto, I think one of the other big things that people don't understand is there are massive, massive companies out there buying real estate. They're buying real estate for the sole purpose of the fact that if they own all of the real estate, what does that mean? That means you can't buy real estate, but you still need a place to live.
Well, you're speaking our language, buddy boy, because that's what Brandon and I do. We buy real estate. So, because we're getting ahead of that game.
I figured that would be a great setup for Brandon as he's probably going to roll for a few minutes here.
Yeah, and this will be like the Night Owl introduction. This guy has the floor. He can talk for as long as he wants on this topic.
He can talk all night.
And we're going to be blessed just to hear his thoughts on this. And so bear with the audio. It's worth
Brandon,
it. Just
you let us know when you're done.
You tell us.
Yeah. Wow. With that intro, that second intro, boy, my goodness. That where do you start? I mean, the Great Reset that's what it's truly about. And I honestly, you knew there was New World Order. You knew there was, the George Soros of the world, 10, 15, 20 years ago. You knew there was like those secret actors behind the scenes. But, now you have Klaus Schwab. You have them writing books just in the last 5 years. I have at least 4 of his books, writing literally about the Great Reset. The book comes out a couple months after lockdowns start. Like how in the world does a book get published about the Great Reset 3 months later? Just things that just don't make sense, right? So you have to ask yourself, what's going on behind the scenes. And, at the end of the day, you guys touched on something with like, the taxes and all that. The Fed, again, if you look up some of the old stuff from the Fed, I think there's a 1949 speech that one of the chairmen of the Fed gave, and they talked about how taxes are literally not needed. That's inconsequential to this because we have the control, we have the power to print currency. So all taxes are for is to basically redirect wealth, redistribute wealth, and then direct policy and tell, basically herd the sheep around to what we want them to do. And it literally says it in his speech. He says it in the speech. It's written there. I have a picture of it somewhere. I was trying to find it while you guys were talking. I can't find it, but you can Google it. It's the real estate guys have talked about it. Robert Kiyosaki has talked about it. Many people have talked about it. And it says right there what they can do because they don't need taxes. So this whole argument about taxes is completely this shell game. And yet we still all talk about it like it's something like it get raised, it needs to get lowered. When an adult in the room would just say, hey, can we just look over here? The Fed already told us this is completely ridiculous and there's no need for it. They just do it to redistribute wealth and direct the sheep where they want to go. But yet, again, no one, we're not one person in a million, as John Maynard Keynes said, can detect inflation, can detect what's going on, or else they're if they could, there'd be riots in the street in the morning. And it's true because there's not. We're just going around doing whatever we want, following the Great Reset, which is like Chad, like you noted, crypto is going to be massive. It already is and will be. Bitcoin, the more I study it, the more I believe it will eat and devour everything. It is truly the way out. It's removing yourself from the system. It's getting guns and ammo, getting food storage, and real estate, Bitcoin, gold, silver, and being out of the system, being out of the game that they're all playing. And there's enough, ample evidence to suggest what they're doing is leading to destruction. As we've seen, we got Fed chairmen resigning now this past week. They're doing insider trading. If any of us did it, we'd be in prison. And yet they're front running their own stock plays, and it's mind blowing. It's truly mind blowing to see what's going on. And if this was a movie, whether it's the virus or whether it's the Fed doing what they're doing, everyone would know the outcome. It wouldn't be a question. You'd all see it coming. Oh, I know how this movie ends. Like, this is really easy. But for some reason, people in their own life, and they're running their own life, they can't see what's going on. And I think, Chad, you alluded to it in the beginning of the show, actually, which is getting our egos out of the way. I know a lot of us talk to people that are older than us in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and a lot of it has to do with they don't want to believe that they were lied to their entire life. I think that's something that is really It's hard for a human to realize, wow, I believe something that was completely entire life. That is not easy to do. And the younger you are and the younger you grasp it, the easier it is. But I remember, I mean, I've talked to numerous people who told me, well, I just thought Walter Cronkite 40, 50 years was telling us the truth. Like, why would someone ever lie to us? And that was the one news source everyone got their news from. And it was the greatest generation. It was the silent generation. It was the boomers. I mean, we're all guilty of just accepting authority and at their word when there was deceitful things behind the scenes. And now it's culminating in the Great Reset, which is, again, in their own words, go to their website, go see all the players, all the partners, all the people they have affiliated with them, the Facebooks, everyone, and the books they've written on all of it. And this is it's out in the open. This is completely out in the open. And like you alluded to, Chad, and Dave, both of you talked about, that they've been buying bonds now for 15, 20 years away, mind you, from all of us. So driving up the prices, driving down the rates, and then driving up the prices of a bond. So they're at 5,000-year highs in bond prices to drive out of the open market of buying them, just like they are homes. And dates and ideals, that's all day long. We got hedge funds buying homes all over the country, driving up prices away from all of the mom and pop investors and owners, retail owners trying to buy homes. So they're out there trying to get an investment or a return for their hedge fund or for their 401k, mom and dad's 401k, or for a pension fund that's, again, insolvent and completely and underwater. And so it's this shell game that's just doom vortex, this doom loop, buying assets away from all of us, paying taxes we don't even have to pay, which is theft. And the Fed has admitted as much in their own words. And it will end in a complete catastrophe, the seventh stage, which is a currency crisis. 7 stages of empire, which we talked about in the beginning. It will end that way. It always has. And it's probably the next 5 to 15 years. It'll end that way. I do believe it'll be more of like a whimper than a bang. I think you just position yourself in assets outside the system, whether it's Bitcoin, gold and silver, be prepared, for anything. And it's going to end with things just happening. Like the Fed coin will come out. They'll say, hey, you get $10,000 to, join, get this app, and they don't tell you that we can track you. Obviously, everything you do, give you, Chris will have a different inflation policy. Chad will have a different inflation policy, depending on, look at China with their social credit scores, what they're already doing there, what they want to do here with each person. Oh, you said something against the government. We're going to, now you can't ride the bus. Now you can't do this. It's already happening. I mean, it's happening everywhere. Cyprus, and, I don't, if everyone remembers 8 years ago, they just came into their bank accounts and took the money out of people's bank accounts just in one fell swoop, took their money out of their accounts. And Bitcoin was already growing at that time. People started going to Bitcoin. We've seen it now in Venezuela. People going to Bitcoin, Nigeria, El Salvador. We just made it legal tender. There's a lot more countries that are going to do that. And the Bitcoin, again, not to go on some massive rant. I'm no Bitcoin expert. I probably studied for 100 hours, so I know a bit. But it truly is a path towards global peace. Because like we said earlier, fiat currency gives you the ability to print, and transfer wealth, and then go to war. You would never, ever, with a hard currency, something was backed by a deflationary asset, backed by a sound money, you could never go to war for 20 years. If Afghanistan would have been impossible, because you couldn't just keep printing currency and funding the war, because there's only so much to go around if you have a hard currency, if you're backed by gold or if you're backed by Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, the network itself, it hardens itself over time. It takes the best from everything else and it keeps hardening itself. It's proved it gets attacked all the time, every single day. It continually has won over and over again. At this point, it won't be defeated. I would put all my money on that. It will not be defeated. It can't at this point. It's too decentralized, and it's going to eat everything. It really is the apex predator, as Michael Saylor says, or numerous people talking about that. And it will be, I think, assets will fall into and basically just fold into Bitcoin over the next 20 years. And is going to, what I was saying, the last thing I'll say is it promotes peace, because if I was listening to Michael Saylor and Robert Breedlove, and they had this series, and they were talking about this, and they were talking about, you can steal anything on earth. You can steal real estate from someone, you can steal their title to it, you can steal gold and silver, you can get into their will and trust and all these things by killing them or getting life insurance and pulling the trigger and killing someone. But you can't do that with Bitcoin, because the keys go with you. If you won't know the keys in your head and that's it, someone is more incentivized to negotiate with you to get those than kill you. It's impossible to get that Bitcoin otherwise. And so when you start going down the road and seeing what's happening, this is why the Fed and the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab, all the Davos crowd, World Economic Forum are so scared of Bitcoin, and because it's too late, the cat's out of the bag, and they're trying to create their own coins to compete with it. And it'll be the same as the US dollar. It's the same exact thing. It's infinite currency, and the worst kind of currency, trackable currency. And they will get devoured eventually by Bitcoin as well. Because if we go in these 250-year to 500-year cycles, we've talked a lot about cycles, but there's a lot of these big cycles. You go through swings where you had kings and queens, you had monarchs, you had oligopolies, and then you keep switching like every 250 to 500 years. And you had the revolution, you had the French Revolution, the American Revolution 250 years ago, and now we're getting into it keeps getting more decentralized. And now it's going again to more decentralization. And it's the same thing. All of us are realizing, we started Rogan, the people everywhere are starting to realize we can't have this human-based, just changing goalposts every single day. That's why Bitcoin continues to grow in value, grow in network strength, because it's decentralized, it's code, it's immutable. It's impossible to change basically at this point. It's too big, it's too decentralized. So that's why I think it'll continue to grow. And the people, because it's millennials driving it, obviously, in the Gen Z, people seeing their parents and the grandparents getting screwed in 2008, getting screwed in 2020, getting screwed in 2000, and they've had enough of it. They've had enough of seeing this over and over again, and there are parents and grandparents accepting the elites at their word. Basically, end of the day, that's what's happening. It's the Klaus Schwabs, them just thinking, oh, we're going to accept it again, and people aren't. People are showing they're not going to accept it, and that will play out over the next 5 or 10 years, which coincides at the end of the day with their 2030 Great Reset. You'll own nothing and be happy. So, that'll be true for a part of the podcast, but for those that are prepared, many of us, we'll be doing something differently, and it's going to be a great event, I guess, over the next 10, 15 years to see how this plays out.
It's even crazy that the 2020 World Economic Forum, they called it the Great Reset.
Yep.
Right.
Insane.
These are the people who are running our lives, so to speak, right? These are the people, the people who are making all of these decisions. And like you said, Brandon, they're not hiding any of it. I mean,
zero of it.
Before COVID became a pandemic, I think it was 2016 or 2017, there was a World Health Forum. And at these World Health Forums, they play a game of sorts. And the game is, let's go through a scenario and how would we attack this? And the scenario that they came up with was nothing short of COVID. It was practically to the point of, hey, what would we do if a virus was accidentally created in a lab and got out and infected the whole world? What would we do to stop this virus? Would we shut down countries? Would we shut down jobs? Would we make people mask up? Would we make them take a vaccine? And they went through all this stuff before anyone even knew about COVID.
Yep, and we would do it with a 2-week catchy phrase marketing thing of 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
now
2
we're on
weeks
day
to flatten the curve.
591 of 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yep. There's a great video too. I think I just shared it on Instagram or something the other day. It's a great Fauci from 2019, like 6 months before the lockdown, basically. And the guy, I forget who it was now, interviewing him, and it's a 20-minute interview. It was actually really interesting because I didn't know much about Fauci until 2020. But you can tell he's just he's a guy, like, he's obviously one of the elites, but you can just tell, like, he's just doing his thing, and it is what it is. And you can tell, I think he's really been railroaded obviously over the last 18 months. You can probably go either way with that, but it was funny because he's in there saying, like, well, he basically Fauci's explaining all these different diseases. The guy keeps grilling on my, like, how this disease, SARS, all Ebola, all this different stuff. And he explains like a minute answer for each one, like why it was bad, what they're doing to contain it, and why it's not going to be around anymore. And then at the end, he's like, why? Like, how do I get rid of all this stuff? Like, how do I just not catch any of this stuff? And he's kind of joking at the end, like, do I wear a mask all the time? Do I just get away from people when they're sneezing? And Fauci's just like laughs. He's like, no, like, none of that paranoid stuff. Like, don't be crazy. Just go outside, get sun, go for a walk, get some exercise, eat healthy. and they're just joking, and then the interview ends, and it's so telling. Because you can tell, like right before that, actually, he gave, because again, I don't want to hammer the guy necessarily for that, because right before that, he gave a great answer for a minute and a half about leadership, actually. And it was an unbelievable answer about leaders and what leaders have to do, and setting a vision for people and a mission, and how people have to come around to that. And so he literally, the second to last question was an awesome answer about leadership. And then the very next thing was him telling the truth again. I was just saying, no, you don't need, just don't be paranoid. Just, do the normal life thing and go outside, be healthy, take a walk, go work out, eat healthy, just be a healthy person. Hands, once or twice a day, that type of thing. Right. And here we are, and the tune has changed 3,000 times. So you can tell there's a Klaus Schwab's with people behind the scenes pulling the puppet strings, pulling the strings of different people that are out there talking. And it's very fascinating. If you don't look closely, it's hard to see. Obviously, if you're going to watch, the Daily Show every single day, you're going to watch FM talk radio in the morning, or you're just going to watch, Sunday Night Football, then yeah, you're going to miss it. You're not going to be able to see through the lines and see between the lines as to what's really going on. So it's bread and circus, I guess, at the end of the day. It's bread and circus. It's the Roman Colosseum. We're kind of coming full circle now. It's the Roman Colosseum. It's, hey, don't worry about the government's doing out there in the building behind the Colosseum. Just go in there with your bread. We'll give you a bunch of free bread. We'll give you a bunch of free wine, free vino, and you guys can have at it. Go kill each other in the Colosseum. Who don't mind us what we're doing over here, and we have it. It's nowadays. It's e-game, esports. It's Sunday Night Football. It's fantasy. It's DraftKings. It's pot shops. It's all this different stuff. And I always ask everyone, do you think this is the beginning of an empire or the end of an empire? And it's, once you start looking in those terms, it's very easy to see which direction we're headed.
I think the crazy thing about Fauci is the fact that, imagine being him and the Clintons. We all know what happens when you turn against the Clintons, right? Because Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.
Right.
So, but
under 120 people that Clintons knew, they didn't kill themselves either, or what?
But for real, like, think about Fauci. You have this guy who's been at the helm of every infectious disease that's affected the world for the last how many years now, right? 30, 40 years. And as much as everything right now is politicized, what is he supposed to do? Because that if he doesn't follow the bandwagon, I mean, his life's going to be in ruins, right? But at the same point, I mean, don't you want to live for something, right?
Gotta live for something.
At some point, don't you want to make your last stand?
That's what really blows me away, is people just don't. I think about that all the time, actually, and it's like, how are there so many people in the government everywhere, and just at all levels of society, really, that can say things, that can whistle blow, that can take a stand, that can be a human being, can be moral, can be ethical, and they don't stand. And it's, again, at the end of the day, it comes back to, even biblically, right? The root of evil is money. A root of all evil is money. And people take that, I believe, very incorrectly. When you really start reading the Bible over and over again, I've been reading to the kids the last couple of years, the children's Bible, and it's so funny to say that. But when you start reading it over and over again and kind of getting like a glimpse of like the entire Bible, and I've read it now multiple times over and over again, you start seeing the patterns. And then one of the patterns is, it's not money itself. Money is a tool. It's just like a hammer. It means nothing. It's paper, it's gold, silver, whatever people deem money to be. That's what it is. It doesn't mean anything. And people place this thing on money, but it's misplaced. It's just like the root of what we've been talking about, where we put band-aids on bullet holes, when in reality, it's people seeking power. It's the people that will do anything to keep their job or do anything to achieve power. That is the root of all evil. Money is a representation of that thought, that mindset, but it's not money itself, or it's not currency itself. And I think that's the thing that so many people get confused, especially in religious circles. I think they intertwine that and they mix that up too much. When in reality, it's, you look at the Pharisees and the Sadducees in Jerusalem, or wherever it was, the high priests, and they were constantly seeking power. And that's what killed Christ ultimately. They wanted power. They didn't want this guy coming in and saying, no, like, this is decentralized, actually, guys. Like, this is, the God is ultimate, not the rules, not this law, these laws you guys are making up or whatever it is. It's decentralized. It's God is at the helm of everything, and they did not like that one bit.
Nope. They sure didn't, man. They sure didn't. And they didn't like it because it took away from their power, for sure. And the only way to solve that is to have decentralized platform approach. So, but hey, man, what a great show. I mean, I'm fired up. I don't know how I'm going to go to bed tonight. This has been absolutely awesome.
Just got to close your eyes.
Yeah, Brandon, question for you. How, if people listen to this and they get fired up about what they heard, how can they get a hold of you? I know you and I work together. I mean, they can go to mittenmadeproperties.com. That's mitten.
Yeah,
like
give yourself a little promo.
Mittenmadeproperties.com. But how else can they get a hold of you and ask you some questions?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's probably one of the best ways. You know, can get me on Instagram, you know, just Brandon Gentile 811. Twitter, another way as well. Obviously, Brandon_Gentile. And then, like Chris said, our company, mittenmadeproperties.com. Those are probably some of the best ways to get a hold of me. We check all those all the time. And yeah, just thanks for having me on, guys. It's always fun to be able to talk about this stuff because I love talking about it. And you can't just unfortunately talk about it all day long with people. So appreciate it.
I know if you and I got into it going on a daily huddle, I think people would lose their minds. They would be like, "Oh my God, please make those two stop."
Exactly.
Yeah, imagine just approaching a random stranger and whipping out some of those facts that you just dropped. Like in 1929, I'm like, "Oh my God, where does he learn this from?"
No,
Holy smokes!
It's funny. I mean, seriously, like in middle school, high school, and college, I was debated teachers. I got in fights with teachers and professors. And I really, in the 2012 election, I stopped like doing politics in general. It just became, very clear. I thought, oh, wow, we passed socialized medicine. This is like super obvious, like now. And now the American people, like, oh, shucks, the people are really they're going to see it now. And then Obama gets reelected. And again, you could insert anyone there, Franklin Roosevelt, Obama, it doesn't matter, Biden, whoever got elected at that time. The fact that you had this rammed down your throat, we have to pass it before we see what's in it. Hey, just take this shot before we find out what's in it. It's the same concept over and over and over again. And then people just accept it, just do it, go along with it. And that's when it really turned for me, where I was like, wow, I've got to figure out, I got to stop, just yelling and screaming at people for 10, 12, 15 years. I got to worry about myself, put my own mask on when you're on a flight. I always say to the team, you put your own mask on first, then you can go help other people. They always say that to you, obviously, when you're on a plane, right? Put your own thing on, because if you're dead, you can't affect any change. You can't help anyone else. So take care of myself. I had to figure out the currency, money, business, like what is going on, so that way I can take care of myself and help the people around me. And that's what the last 8-9 years for me have been about, is figuring that game out. And, I feel like I've got it pretty figured out. It's still a long way to go, but that's been it for the last 8-9 years for me. It's just figuring that, so that way I could operate properly, see through the all the garbage, and then read between the lines. So
it's awesome.
Well said. That awesome. Is well said. All right,
Commander
guys.
Gentile.
Commander Whalls.
Oh, you know what? Last thing I was going to say. That my other point with that was, I stopped arguing with people because of what, coming full circle, what we talked about in the beginning. It's when you realize that people don't have, and Chad, you were saying this, like throwing out these facts or whatever. And again, I had to learn how to start selling more, because as a kid, it was just very factual and very logic based for me. And where I had to learn, what I had to learn with business was being able to sell, being able to articulate, being able to tell stories, which again, didn't tell many stories tonight necessarily, but being able to tell a story, because throwing out dates and figures doesn't mean anything. It's hard to get to persuade somebody without telling a story. But it became very obvious to me when you had, people, just so many people had a lack of history or historical knowledge as to what was going on. You can't argue with people. It's impossible. Like we said earlier, it's impossible to argue with people when they don't have a basis in how we were founded, or they don't have a basis in even philosophy, or human philosophy. They don't have this basis in natural law or even biblical principles, or the way we were founded, the way the human beings have been for thousands of years. It's very hard to operate and argue or debate someone even. And that's I think, coming full circle, that's the saddest part about, I think, our country right now, is you can't even debate someone because there's such a lack of, quite honestly, like IQ in a way. And I hate saying that, but just a lack of knowledge, a lack of critical thinking, a lack of IQ and a lack of EQ to be able to, emotional intelligence, to be able to have a debate with somebody and say, hey, this is why I think this, and not have them, like you said, Chad, earlier, scream at you, tell you why, well, you hate this person, you hate that group of people, or you can't even have that debate anymore. And that's probably the scariest thing out of all this, to be quite honest. So well, appreciate you guys having me on.
That's why we have safe spaces in all our colleges now. So.
Yeah, I'm going to make a Chad zone in Connecticut. You can only enter if you like a safe space and your name's Chad. Everyone else can't enter. You have to abide by my rules. Nowadays, you can identify as anything you want, so everyone can just identify as Chad.
Right.
And then we'll call it a day.
True.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, until next week, when we come back with another thrilling episode of the Building Walls podcast. Until then, Commander Whalls, peace be with you. And
have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Brandon Gentile, we will refer to you as Commander Gentile, and we tell you go in grace.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.